Have you ever felt underestimated? Like no matter how hard you work, your efforts are dismissed as nothing special? Well, that's exactly what Malcolm Reed faced, until he proved the world wrong in the most unexpected way. From a humble mechanic working on old motorcycles in Boston to changing the future of the entire automotive industry, Malcolm's journey is nothing short of extraordinary. But here's the thing, his story isn't just about innovation. It's about fighting against the giants, standing firm when the world tells you that your dreams are impossible. So, what happens when one man's vision becomes a force too powerful to ignore? Stay tuned to find out. If you love stories of resilience, innovation, and the power of belief, you're in the right place. But before we dive into this incredible journey, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and ring the bell so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. And hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the story. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think about Malcolm's incredible journey. Now, let's get started with the Phoenix engine. Disclaimer: the story you are about to hear is entirely fictional. While the characters and events are not based on real people or real-life occurrences, the story is intended to provide valuable moral lessons, motivation, and inspiration. The themes explored within this story are meant to encourage personal growth, resilience, and the power of innovation. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. Please note that the content is created for educational and entertainment purposes and is not meant to represent any specific individual or company. Viewer discretion is advised. Enjoy the story and let it inspire you to chase your dreams and overcome any obstacles in your own life. The Phoenix engine is the inspiring story of Malcolm Reed, a skilled mechanic from Boston who is underestimated for his work on old motorcycles. Dismissed as someone just playing with oil, Malcolm has a hidden genius, a revolutionary engine capable of transforming the future of the automotive industry. When he refuses a lucrative buyout offer from a powerful corporation, Centurion Motors, they wage a fierce campaign to crush his invention and discredit him. Undeterred by the immense pressure and obstacles, Malcolm fights for his creation, facing legal battles, corporate manipulation, and public scrutiny. As he struggles to protect his intellectual property, he discovers that his journey is about more than just an engine. It's a battle for innovation, integrity, and the right to challenge the status quo. Will Malcolm's vision ignite a global revolution in energy-efficient technology, or will the powers that be silence his dream forever? The Phoenix engine is a tale of resilience, passion, and the transformative power of believing in oneself against all odds. Boston's winters had a way of sinking into the bones. The wind carved down Dorchester Avenue, chasing scraps of paper and whistling between abandoned brick buildings. Among them stood Reed Motorworks, a workshop so small and unremarkable that most people passed it by without a second glance. Its faded red door was streaked with years of grime, and a wooden sign above it, hand-painted and crooked, read simply Reed Motorworks. Inside, the air was thick with the sense of oil, rust, and time itself. Worn-out wrenches hung from nails in the wall. Old motorcycles, some half-stripped of parts, sat in various states of disrepair like sleeping beasts. It was a place where time slowed, where the hum of the outside world dulled against the buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. Malcolm Reed wiped his hands on a rag blackened with grease. At 34, he had the build of a man who knew hard work. His arms were strong, his knuckles scarred, his dark eyes focused and serious. His hair was close-cropped, his beard neatly trimmed, but there was a restlessness in his movements that hinted at something more than the small repairs he performed daily. That morning, Malcolm was bent over the rusted frame of a 1956 Triumph Bonneville. The carburetor was clogged again, but it was not the machine that consumed his thoughts. Behind a large canvas sheet at the back of the shop lay something far more important, something he had been quietly building for years in secret. Every night after closing time, when the streets emptied and the city's noise faded into a low hum, he would pull the sheet back and work until his hands ached and his eyelids grew heavy. The Phoenix engine. A prototype he had crafted from the bones of old engines and the sparks of new ideas. An engine that could change everything. Lighter, cleaner, and more efficient than anything currently on the market. An engine that could, if the world ever cared enough to notice, reshape how people thought about travel, energy, and power. But the world had not noticed. Not yet. Down the street, a group of teenagers leaned against the wall of a convenience store, laughing loudly. Malcolm caught a few words as they passed. Man, he just plays with junk. Old bikes and dirty hands. Never going nowhere. It was not the first time Malcolm had heard it. It would not be the last. In the eyes of the world, he was just a mechanic, a man who had never left the neighborhood, a man who spent his life elbow-deep in grease because that was all he knew. He tightened the last bolt on the Triumph, wiped his forehead, and pushed the bike out onto the street. The owner, Mr. Halvorsen, an elderly white man who had lived 3 blocks down for decades, arrived a few minutes later. He greeted Malcolm with a half-hearted smile and handed over a crumpled wad of bills, more out of obligation than gratitude. "Appreciate it, son," he said, his voice carrying a tired condescension, as if Malcolm's skills were little more than a parlor trick. Malcolm nodded and pocketed the cash without comment. He had long since learned that dignity was not something others gave you. It was something you held for yourself, quietly and stubbornly, even when the world looked right through you. As the day wore on, the workshop remained mostly empty. Malcolm spent the afternoon tuning a battered Honda CB750 and replacing the chain on a Yamaha XS650. The radio played a steady stream of old blues songs, crackling through the static, filling the space with the sound of voices that knew about hard times and endurance. The sun dipped low over Boston, casting long shadows through the grime-streaked windows. Malcolm turned the sign on the door to closed and locked it behind him. He moved to the back of the shop and, with a careful glance over his shoulder, pulled back the canvas sheet. There it was. His dream made real. The Phoenix engine was beautiful in a way that only a true craftsman could appreciate. A compact block of innovation, designed from scratch with salvaged metals and precision welding. Every bolt, every curve, every piston crafted with purpose. It was not perfect yet. There were still nights of work ahead, still tests to run and problems to solve. But it was close. Malcolm placed his hand on the engine's cool surface. He could almost feel it humming beneath his fingertips, waiting to breathe. Outside, Boston buzzed with its usual urgency. Lights blinked on in office windows. Cars honked in frustration. Lives moved on without noticing the small workshop tucked away behind Dorchester Avenue, the man inside it, or the future he was forging in secret. Malcolm tightened his grip on the wrench in his hand and smiled, a quiet, determined smile. Let them underestimate him. Let them talk. Soon enough, the world would have no choice but to listen. The next morning brought a sharp chill to the air, the kind that rattled window panes and painted rooftops with frost. Malcolm Reed rolled up the garage door of Reed Motorworks just as the first rays of pale sunlight spilled onto Dorchester Avenue. He took a deep breath, savoring the quiet before the day began. He had barely settled behind the counter when he heard the soft purr of an engine, unusual in its steadiness. A moment later, a gleaming black motorcycle pulled into the alley, scattering pigeons into the air. The bike itself was a relic, a 1965 Norton Commando, polished to a mirror finish but clearly struggling with its inner workings. The rider, bundled in a navy peacoat and dark jeans, pulled off her helmet to reveal a cascade of straight black hair and sharp, curious eyes. Malcolm wiped his hands on a clean rag and stepped outside. The woman swung off the bike with ease, her boots hitting the ground with a soft thud. "You Reed?" she asked, her voice clear, carrying a trace of authority. "That is me," Malcolm replied, offering a small nod. "You got trouble?" She gestured to the motorcycle with a look of frustration. "Engine keeps stalling at low speeds. Been to 3 shops already. They either could not fix it or made it worse." Malcolm walked around the bike, his practiced eye catching the subtle tremor of the engine, the faint whine beneath the polished exterior. He knelt to inspect it closer. "Beautiful machine," he said thoughtfully, "but she is breathing wrong. Might be something deeper than just a tuning issue." The woman crossed her arms and regarded him. "Name's Lena. Lena Park." Malcolm stood and wiped his hands again, extending one to her. "Nice to meet you, Lena. Leave it with me. I will see what I can do." She hesitated, then handed him the keys. "You are my last hope," she said, half joking, half serious. As she walked away down the alley, Malcolm caught a glimpse of the university emblem stitched onto her satchel. Harvard. He watched her disappear around the corner before turning back to the bike. There was something different about her. Not just the fact that she rode a classic motorcycle better than most men he knew, but the way she had looked around his shop as if she had seen something others missed. Malcolm wheeled the Norton inside and set to work. Hours melted away as he stripped the carburetor, adjusted the valves, and replaced a series of worn cables. He noticed the meticulous restoration work that had been done on the bike's frame, but it was clear the engine had been neglected, likely by someone who had polished the surface without understanding the heart within. As he worked, Malcolm's mind wandered back to the Phoenix engine, sitting quietly under its sheet in the corner. It was never far from his thoughts, a pulse beating just beneath the surface of every repair, every adjustment, every breath he took in the workshop. By early evening, the Norton roared back to life, smooth and steady. Malcolm grinned, feeling a familiar rush of satisfaction. He cleaned his hands and prepared the paperwork, just as the shop bell jingled and Lena Park walked back in. Her eyes lit up when she heard the engine's steady hum. "You fixed her," she said, almost in awe. Malcolm shrugged modestly. "She just needed someone to listen close." Lena approached, running a hand over the handlebars. Then her gaze drifted past him to the far corner of the shop where the canvas sheet still covered the Phoenix engine. "You building something back there?" she asked casually. Malcolm stiffened slightly. Years of instinct told him to deflect, to keep secrets close. But something about her tone, about the genuine curiosity in her voice, made him pause. "Working on a little project," he said slowly. "Nothing finished yet." Lena nodded, but her eyes stayed locked on the covered form. "I am an engineer," she said. "Professor, actually. Mechanical systems at Harvard." Malcolm raised an eyebrow. He had not guessed wrong about her sharpness. "You mind if I take a look?" she asked. Malcolm hesitated, the words caught in his throat. Showing someone the Phoenix engine felt like handing over a piece of his soul. But this was not a corporate executive or a TV reporter looking for a story. She was someone who understood engines, someone who might see the beauty he had built instead of just the grime and noise. Without speaking, he walked to the corner and peeled back the canvas. The Phoenix engine sat revealed under the dim workshop lights, a sculpture of brushed steel and intricate wiring. It looked like something from the future, yet it had been born from scrap yards and midnight sketches. Lena stepped closer, her mouth slightly open. "What is this?" she whispered. "My own design," Malcolm said quietly. "High-efficiency internal combustion. Burns cleaner, runs lighter. Made mostly from recycled materials." Lena knelt to inspect the engine, her fingers tracing the custom intake system, the unique arrangement of the pistons. This could change everything," she murmured. Malcolm chuckled softly, a sound without bitterness. "That is what I have been telling myself for the last 5 years." Lena stood up and faced him, a spark in her eyes that matched the one he carried in his chest every time he touched the engine. "Would you be willing to test it?" she asked. "Proper testing. At my lab." Malcolm stared at her for a long moment, the weight of years of solitude pressing down on him. Then with a slow nod he said, "Yeah, I would like that." Outside, the Boston night crept in, but inside Reed Motorworks, something new had begun to stir. Not just hope, not just ambition. A partnership. A promise. The first crack of light breaking through years of doubt. The university laboratory was a stark contrast to Reed Motorworks. Bright, sterile, and humming with quiet precision, it smelled of new plastic and metal polish rather than oil and dust. Malcolm Reed felt the weight of every curious glance as he wheeled the Phoenix engine into the testing bay, mounted securely on a steel frame he had built by hand. Lena Park walked ahead of him, clipboard in hand, her footsteps crisp against the polished concrete floors. She had arranged everything: the time slot, the permissions, even a small audience of fellow professors and graduate students. Malcolm was not sure if they came to witness a breakthrough or to quietly enjoy the failure of an unknown mechanic who dared to dream bigger than his station. As he connected the final hoses and wires, Malcolm could feel the tension tightening around his chest. This was the moment years of work had led to, the moment when the Phoenix would either take flight or fall apart before a crowd that would not soon forget. "Ready when you are," Lena said, offering a reassuring nod. Malcolm tightened the last bolt, wiped his hands and moved to the ignition controls. He glanced once at the small group gathered behind the safety glass. Lena, a heavy-set man in a tweed jacket he recognized as the head of mechanical engineering, 2 younger technicians whispering to each other, and a stern-faced woman scribbling notes. No matter. The Phoenix was not built for their approval. It was built for a future he could see even if they could not. He flipped the first switch. The lights on the control panel flickered to life. A software began to hum from the engine's core. Malcolm adjusted a few dials, his hands steady. Then with a deep breath he pressed the ignition. The Phoenix engine coughed once, a sharp bark that echoed through the room. For a moment nothing. The silence stretched tight. Then the engine roared awake. But it was not the choking, smoke-belching roar of traditional combustion. It was a clean, deep sound, smooth and powerful like a living heartbeat. The entire test bench vibrated with the energy pulsing from the machine. Malcolm adjusted the throttle. The Phoenix responded instantly, the output numbers on the monitor climbing steadily. Torque, energy efficiency, thermal output, all charted in real time across the screens behind the glass. The professors leaned forward, whispering urgently among themselves. 70% fuel efficiency, Lena said aloud, reading the data. 60% reduction in emissions. 30% reduction in weight. This is impossible. Malcolm allowed himself the smallest of smiles. Impossible had been the word they used whenever something had not yet been done. The engine ran for a full 20 minutes without a hitch. When Malcolm finally powered it down, the room fell into stunned silence. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. He stepped back from the test bench, wiping his hands, heart pounding but face calm. The heavy-set professor approached, clearing his throat. "Where exactly did you study engineering, Mr. Reed?" Malcolm met his eyes steadily. "Right here," he said. "In this city. In workshops like mine. From every busted engine I ever took apart and put back together better." The professor frowned, clearly struggling between admiration and disbelief. The stern-faced woman spoke next. "Do you have patents filed?" "Not yet," Malcolm answered. "But I have the designs. I have the research. I have the proof." The woman nodded slowly, jotting something down in her notebook. Lena stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "With your permission, Malcolm, I would like to help you prepare the patents. I would like to help you protect this technology before someone tries to take it from you." Malcolm looked at her, seeing not just an engineer but an ally. Someone who understood what it meant to build something when no one else believed you could. "I would appreciate that," he said. Behind the glass, the murmurs continued. Some filled with curiosity. Others tinged with skepticism. But the numbers were undeniable. The Phoenix engine was real. And it was about to change everything. As Malcolm packed up his tools, he could feel the shift in the room. Respect, grudging but growing. Interest, genuine and cautious. Fear, from those who realized they were staring at the future, and that it had not come from a corporation or a laboratory, but from a grease-stained workshop hidden behind Dorchester Avenue. Later that evening, as Malcolm loaded the Phoenix engine back into his truck, Lena handed him a folder filled with initial paperwork for patent applications. "This is just the beginning," she said. Malcolm nodded. In his heart, he already knew. The first spark had been struck. The fire was coming. And this time, no one would put it out. The winter deepened in Boston, layering the city in white and making the nights stretch longer than the days. Malcolm Reed returned to his workshop each evening with his hands aching from cold and work, but his heart burned hotter than ever. Word of the Phoenix engine spread faster than either he or Lena Park had anticipated. First it was a few emails from small engineering journals, then calls from local news stations, and finally the heavy knock of the industrial giants at his door. It started innocently enough. A glossy flyer slipped under the workshop door, bearing the logo of a major automotive conglomerate. Malcolm tossed it in the trash without reading past the first line. The next day, a man in a tailored suit appeared in the alleyway behind Reed Motorworks. His shoes were polished so brightly that they reflected the grime of the cracked pavement. Malcolm watched him approach, a part of him already bracing for the conversation he knew was coming. "Mr. Reed," the man said with a practiced smile. "Name's David Connors. I represent Centurion Motors. We have been hearing about your project. Very impressive work." Malcolm leaned back against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Appreciate it," he said coolly. Connors chuckled lightly, unfazed by the cold welcome. "Centurion would like to discuss a partnership," he said. "We have resources you could only dream of. Research labs, production lines, distribution across 4 continents. We can take your engine and bring it to the world." Malcolm did not move. "And in return?" he asked. Connors spread his hands as if the answer was obvious. "You get a handsome payout. Royalties. Your name attached, of course. Fame. Security. Everything an independent like you could want." Malcolm studied him, noting the easy charm, the rehearsed lines, the predatory gleam beneath the polish. "You mean you want to own it?" Malcolm said. "Put your name first. Tuck me away in a footnote." Connor's smile tightened just slightly. "You could be part of history," he said. "Or you could stay in this charming little garage, waiting for someone else to pass you by." Malcolm stepped forward, close enough that Connor's cologne could not mask the faint scent of fear that surfaced when a deal started slipping away. "I built the Phoenix to change the future," Malcolm said quietly. "Not to sell it to the same men who kept the future from coming in the first place." Connors opened his mouth, but Malcolm had already turned away, walking back into the workshop and pulling the door closed behind him. The lock clicked home with a finality that echoed down the alley. That night, Malcolm sat at his workbench, the Phoenix engine quietly humming nearby as it ran through self-diagnostics. Lena had been working late at the university, drafting the final patent paperwork. As Malcolm thumbed through a stack of design revisions, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You do not know what you are doing. Take the offer while you still can. He stared at the screen for a long moment before deleting the message. The next week brought more visitors. Some were slick-talking salesmen like Connors. Others were more threatening. One night he returned to the workshop to find the lock jimmied and the Phoenix engine moved half an inch out of place. Nothing had been taken, but the message was clear. We can get to you. We can take what we want. Lena urged him to move the Phoenix to a safer location, and Malcolm agreed, loading it into a reinforced trailer and parking it at a secure facility under university protection. It was not just an engine anymore. It was a target. Despite the growing pressure, Malcolm refused to slow down. He and Lena continued testing, refining, preparing the Phoenix for a public demonstration that would strip the corporations of any chance to steal it quietly. Still, the stress gnawed at him. Sleep came rarely and shallow. Every knock on the door made his hand twitch toward the heavy wrench he kept by the register. Every shadow that passed his alleyway made his stomach tighten. One night, after another long session tweaking the engine's airflow system, Malcolm sat alone in the workshop, staring at a blank sheet of paper. He thought about his father, long gone now, a man who had taught him to tear down an engine when he was just 8 years old. A man who had told him that anything worth building would be worth fighting for. Malcolm closed his eyes and leaned back, the worn leather of the chair creaking under his weight. He knew the wolves were circling. Knew they would not stop until they either owned him or destroyed him. But he also knew something they did not. He was not just a mechanic. He was a builder of futures. And he was ready for them. Boston was buzzing. Not the usual clamor of traffic and construction, but something sharper, more electric. Word of the Phoenix engine's performance had spilled beyond academic journals and niche blogs. Now it was on television. On radio. In every corner of the internet where innovators and investors watched for disruption. The people were split. Some hailed Malcolm Reed as a genius, a visionary who might usher in a cleaner, more sustainable future for the automotive world. Others scoffed at the idea that a grease-stained mechanic from Dorchester could accomplish what billion-dollar corporations had not. On the north side of the Charles River, boardrooms trembled. Investment firms began repositioning portfolios. Car manufacturers doubled down on their R&D departments. Lobbyists whispered into government ears, subtly questioning whether Reed's engine could be safely regulated. But in the heart of Dorchester, a line began forming outside Reed Motor Works. Not for repairs. For hope. Mechanics from nearby towns. Students from local colleges. Engineers who had once been laughed out of their own startups. They came with notebooks and wide eyes, asking questions, offering help, sometimes just wanting to shake the hand of a man who reminded them that invention didn't require privilege. Malcolm didn't let it go to his head. He kept working. Alongside him, Lena juggled meetings and legal filings. She navigated university politics and legal red tape with a grace Malcolm deeply respected. She fought for him in rooms he would never step into, rooms filled with men who wore power like a second skin and still couldn't believe what he had built. In late March, they secured a date for the first public demonstration. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology offered a test field and auditorium. It was an open event, streamed live and attended by engineers, environmentalists, venture capitalists, and corporate scouts. Lena had warned him, the vultures would come with smiles. The wolves with contracts. Everyone would want a piece. Malcolm said only one thing. I won't sell my name. The night before the demonstration, Malcolm stood alone in his workshop, hands resting on the smooth casing of the Phoenix engine. It had taken him 12 years to get here. 12 years of working long hours fixing machines no one cared about. 12 years of being dismissed, overlooked, underestimated. Now even the wind outside felt like it was holding its breath. The next morning, Malcolm and Lena rolled the Phoenix onto the MIT field. The crowd was already massive. Cameras clicked. Drones hovered overhead. In the bleachers sat professors, executives, students, and critics alike. The air buzzed with tension. Lena took the mic and introduced the project, outlining the specs, the testing protocols, the emissions benchmarks. Then she turned to Malcolm. The man himself stepped forward in a black canvas jacket. No flash, no theatrics. He spoke into the mic with calm conviction. This is the Phoenix, he said. It's built to last, to run cleaner, and to lift us out of the dead weight of yesterday's thinking. Then, without flourish, he climbed onto the demonstration motorcycle, the same model that once broke down in front of his shop, now rebuilt from the engine up, and started the ignition. It purred, then roared, smooth, loud, but not angry like a gas guzzler. The sound had a purpose, a hum of control. Malcolm guided the bike around the track, slowly at first, then picking up speed. The crowd watched the data projected on the giant screens: fuel consumption, emissions output, torque readings. Everything was live. The results stunned even the skeptics. 74% fuel efficiency. Near zero emissions. A temperature differential that proved the engine ran cooler than any conventional internal combustion unit on the market. By the time Malcolm pulled the bike to a stop and killed the engine, the silence that followed was deafening. Then the applause came. Slow at first, then rising, and rising, until the field shook with the sound of a city waking up to a new future. Later, as people crowded to shake his hand, to offer investment, to talk about scaling and licensing, Malcolm held his ground. He thanked them, nodded politely. But he made no deals. No promises. He walked Lena to the side, past the crowd, to where the cameras didn't reach. "You see them?" he said quietly, motioning to the younger engineers gathering around the projection screen. "They see it now," Lena said. "Let them build it," he said. "I don't want this engine to belong to one man. I want it to start something no one can stop." She smiled, realizing he wasn't just thinking like an inventor anymore. He was thinking like a movement. That night, as the news anchors called him the man who lit the match and business magazines crowned him the future of mobility, Malcolm Reed sat alone in his truck, the engine quiet beside him. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt tired, but alive, and deeply certain that the next battle was coming. Because now, the world believed in the Phoenix, which meant the empire of the old ways would soon strike back. 2 weeks after the demonstration, Malcolm Reed received a letter. Not a polite inquiry or a fan's thank you note, but a certified, cold-blooded threat in the form of a legal summons. The paper bore the logo of a multinational engine manufacturer, one of the largest in the world. They claimed his Phoenix engine infringed on 2 of their existing patents, designs buried deep in their archives, never developed, never released. The claim was baseless and Malcolm knew it. So did Lena. But the goal wasn't truth. It was delay. Distraction. To trap him in courtrooms and force him to bleed money, to scare potential partners away before the engine could reach the streets. He tossed the letter on the workbench with a grunt. "They're coming," he said. Lena didn't flinch. She had seen it before, powerful companies protecting outdated empires with paper swords and armies of attorneys. "We'll fight them," she said. "You're not alone." But it didn't stop there. A smear campaign followed. Carefully crafted hit pieces began to circulate. Anonymous articles questioning Malcolm's qualifications. Shadowy forums accusing him of falsifying data. An unmarked van was seen parked outside his workshop 2 nights in a row. When Malcolm approached, it sped off into the dark. A journalist who tried to write a profile on Malcolm had her editor pull the piece at the last minute. "Too much heat," he had said. "We're not picking sides." The wolves were no longer circling. They were biting. And Malcolm had to decide, stay in the fire or walk away with his name intact and let the engine die. He chose the fire. At Lena's urging, they enlisted legal counsel from a non-profit firm specializing in tech justice. Young, hungry attorneys who believed in open innovation. One of them, Darrell Quinn, a Harvard Law graduate and former mechanic himself, shook Malcolm's hand and said, "I've been waiting my whole career for a fight like this." They filed countersuits, public statements, patent clarifications, and most importantly, they launched a campaign of their own, one Malcolm initially resisted. "You want to make me a symbol?" he said. "You already are," Lena replied. "They just painted you as the enemy. It's time you reclaimed your story." They filmed a short documentary. Malcolm spoke from the workbench in Reed Motorworks, his hands stained with oil, his voice low and sure. He told the story of how the Phoenix was born, how it ran not just on fuel but on dreams soaked in sweat and stubbornness. It went viral in 2 days. Millions watched. Mechanics in Mumbai and Johannesburg messaged him. Students in Seoul asked for blueprints. Environmental groups in Germany offered support. Even a retired NASA propulsion engineer commented, calling the engine a once-in-a-generation leap. Malcolm watched the numbers rise, his image spreading like wildfire. And still he stayed grounded. He still fixed bikes for neighborhood kids. Still swept the shop floor. Still tinkered late into the night with the next evolution of the Phoenix. But he also watched his back. One night, someone broke into the storage facility housing the engine's early prototypes. The security system was tripped, but by the time police arrived, whoever it was had already gone. Only one thing was taken, a hard drive containing Malcolm's earliest sketches. They had underestimated him. Those sketches were decoys. The real designs lived in Malcolm's mind and in a secure offline server hidden behind a false panel in the shop's back wall. Still, it rattled him. They weren't just trying to stop him now. They were trying to erase him. He called his mother that night. She lived alone now, retired down in South Carolina. He didn't say everything just enough. "You doing okay, baby?" she asked. "Yeah," Malcolm said softly. "Just fighting ghosts." "You always were too smart to be quiet," she said. "Don't let them turn you small." Her voice settled something in him. In the morning he returned to work with new resolve. He walked through the shop, touching the machines, the tools, the pieces of his life. He knew the war wasn't over. But he also knew something else. The fire was no longer a threat. It was his weapon. And he would wield it until the whole world changed or burned trying to stop him. The weeks following the break-in were tense. Every phone call, every knock at the door carried the weight of a new threat. The legal battle stretched on, but more than the paperwork, it was the constant pressure, the feeling of being hunted, that drained Malcolm the most. Yet, the more they pushed against him, the more the world seemed to rise in his defense. Reed Motorworks, once a small garage barely noticed by the neighborhood, became a symbol. People started showing up at all hours. Some came to offer their support, others with a wrench in hand, eager to volunteer. There was even a crowd of children who, after school, gathered at the shop just to watch him work, eyes wide in awe. It was as if Malcolm's refusal to back down had sparked something deeper in them, something that made them believe they too could break through barriers. But it wasn't all cheers and encouragement. Not everyone was on Malcolm's side. The pressure from the corporations was relentless. Every time a new headline praised the Phoenix engine, a counter-story appeared. They attacked his qualifications, his background, his past. It didn't matter how many times he proved the engine's legitimacy, they would not let go. And then, as if on cue, a new wave of trouble hit. An anonymous figure from within his inner circle, the very people who had helped spread the word, began leaking internal design documents to competitors. At first, the leaks were small, seemingly insignificant parts of the Phoenix's blueprints, but with each new release, the stakes grew higher. Malcolm had trusted these people. They were the ones who had helped him test, refine, and perfect the engine. But someone had betrayed him. The thought gnawed at him day and night. Then came the phone call that would change everything. It was Darryl Quinn, his attorney. "Malcolm, they're going to offer you a deal. Centurion Motors is coming to the table. Big numbers. They want the Phoenix engine, and they'll buy you out for a sum that will set you up for life." Malcolm felt the blood drain from his face. He'd been expecting it, but hearing it spoken aloud still hit hard. "Set me up for life?" he repeated. "Or buy me out and bury the future?" Darryl sighed. "I know what you're thinking. But there's a very real possibility they'll bankrupt you before you ever see the inside of a courtroom. And even if you win the lawsuit, they can outspend you for years. This fight could last a decade. You need to be prepared for that." Malcolm stood silent for a long moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "I don't want their money. I want what's mine." "Malcolm, what's yours is already in the past. What they want is control. It's not about the money, it's about keeping you in the shadows while they push their own product to market." Malcolm gripped the phone tighter. "So what do you suggest?" he asked, his voice low. "I'm saying you need to decide whether the fight is worth the cost. This isn't just about the engine anymore. It's about your future, your legacy. It's about whether or not you're willing to sacrifice everything you've built." The call ended without a resolution. Malcolm spent the next few days in a daze, unable to focus. His workshop, once his sanctuary, felt more like a prison. The engine sat in the corner, dormant for the first time in months. He couldn't bring himself to start it. Then, as if to punctuate his doubts, the next piece of the puzzle fell into place. Lena came to him one evening, her face drawn tight with worry. She had always been a rock, but tonight she looked as if she had aged a decade in a matter of days. "They're offering more than just money, Malcolm," she said quietly. "They're offering protection. They're offering us a place at the table. They say they can shut down the lawsuits. They'll keep us out of the media. They'll secure our future. But in return, they want full control of the Phoenix." Malcolm looked at her, feeling the weight of her words settle like stones in his chest. "I know," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I know it's not what we fought for. But we're running out of options. If you keep pushing against them, it's going to cost you everything. You may never see the inside of a courtroom, but you'll never see the inside of a shop again either." Malcolm's heart pounded in his chest. He had worked so hard to bring the Phoenix to life, to keep it his. And now everything was on the line. Not just the engine, but the people who had supported him, who had believed in him when no one else would. "Don't let them win," Lena whispered. In that moment, Malcolm knew he couldn't back down. He could feel the Phoenix burning in his bones, its potential lighting the way. He had already given up too much to stop now. The Phoenix wasn't just an engine. It was a promise. To himself. To everyone who had ever believed that a mechanic from Dorchester could change the world. And no one, not the corporations, not the threats, was going to take that away. He took a deep breath. "We're going to fight," he said, his voice steady. "We're going to take this all the way. They can have their money, but they'll never own the Phoenix." The decision was made. Malcolm Reed would not sell out. He would not let the Phoenix engine, his creation, his lifeblood, be swept under the rug of corporate greed. But with the decision came consequences. The kind of consequences that would test the very core of who he was, of what he believed in. Within days of rejecting Centurion Motors' offer, the floodgates opened. They didn't just attack Malcolm's engine anymore. They attacked his reputation. They painted him as a rogue inventor, a reckless mechanic with no understanding of the greater implications of his work. They claimed his engine was dangerous, untested, a threat to the established order. The media ran stories about his unreliable prototypes, claiming they were prone to failure. Some outlets even went as far as to suggest that his legal battles were signs of instability, painting him as a man desperate for fame and fortune. Malcolm could feel the weight of every word, every headline. Yet he pressed on. He fought back with the only tools he had, the truth and the Phoenix. But even his fiercest allies began to waver. The pressure was mounting. Lena and Daryl worked around the clock, trying to keep the lawsuits at bay, managing public relations, negotiating with potential investors who had once shown eager interest but were now hesitant. Everyone feared the consequences of siding with Malcolm. Malcolm's shop, once filled with hopeful volunteers and supporters, now felt eerily quiet. The laughter had vanished. The phones no longer rang with offers of help. Instead, the sound of silence filled the space where ideas once flowed. Still, Malcolm knew what he had to do. The next move came swiftly, unexpectedly, yet precisely. It was Lena who received the call first. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but the message was crystal clear. Centurion Motors was filing for a cease and desist order. They would stop the production of the Phoenix engine unless all intellectual property related to it was handed over. Daryl's response was blunt. "This isn't just a fight for the engine anymore. It's a fight for your freedom." Malcolm was cornered. Centurion Motors wasn't just trying to bury the Phoenix. They were trying to bury him. They knew that if they controlled the Phoenix, they controlled everything. The future of transportation, the future of innovation, the future of energy-efficient engineering. They didn't just want his engine. They wanted to rewrite history, to erase the idea that anyone, least of all a mechanic from Dorchester, could challenge their supremacy. The legal pressure intensified. The lawsuits started to pile up, each one a heavier blow, each one threatening to push Malcolm deeper into financial ruin. He was forced to take the fight to court. The world was watching. The media followed every move, every filing, every new legal development. It was clear the battle was no longer just about technology. It was about the future of progress itself. And it was going to get worse before it got better. The court hearings began in a high-rise downtown, a stark contrast to the humble shop that had birthed the Phoenix. The building felt cold, distant, like an ivory tower that didn't understand the struggle of the working class. Malcolm sat with Lena and Daryl at the back of the courtroom, surrounded by their legal team and an army of reporters. The opposing side was prepared. Centurion Motors had brought their best, an entire legal team dressed in sharp suits, a public relations team that managed the story as much as the court proceedings, and a barrage of experts and witnesses ready to testify that the Phoenix engine was not only unsafe, but an existential threat to the automotive industry as a whole. They were ruthless. The first few days were brutal. Testimonies filled with technical jargon, insults masked as concerns, and well-rehearsed claims of how the Phoenix would destabilize the market. But in the chaos, Malcolm never flinched. He sat silently, listening to every word, every attack, every claim. Then it was his turn. Malcolm took the stand with a quiet confidence. He didn't wear a suit or tie. He wore his work clothes, the same black canvas jacket he always wore when tinkering with his bikes. He knew that this wasn't just his moment to prove the Phoenix's worth. It was his moment to show who he was. The opposing attorney asked him about his qualifications. How could he, a mechanic, possibly understand the complexities of a sustainable engine system? Malcolm smiled. "I never needed a degree to know how an engine works. I learned from the machines themselves. They taught me what was possible, what we could build. You don't need a fancy degree to build something that runs better, cleaner, and faster." The attorney sneered. "And you expect the court to believe your theory is a solution to the climate crisis?" Malcolm leaned forward, steady. I didn't build the Phoenix to be a solution. I built it to prove a point, that what the world has accepted as good enough isn't enough. We don't need more regulations, more red tape. We need change." The room went silent. Lena watched from the back, her heart swelling with pride. This was it, the moment Malcolm had been waiting for. This wasn't just about fighting the corporations. This was about the truth, about everything he had fought for, everything he had dreamed of. As the courtroom waited for the next move, the door opened and a figure stepped in. It was a face Malcolm knew all too well. Maxwell Hargrave, one of Centurion's highest executives, the man who had personally orchestrated the smear campaign against him. Hargrave had been listening to every word. "I've seen enough," he said, stepping forward. Malcolm's pulse quickened. What was Hargrave doing here? Was this an attempt to intimidate him? Hargrave spoke again, but this time his words were different. "The Phoenix engine isn't just an invention, Malcolm," he said, looking directly at him. "It's a revolution." Malcolm's eyebrows furrowed. Was Hargrave conceding defeat? "No," Hargrave continued, "it's a threat. A threat to everything we've built. And we're not going to let you take that away." The war wasn't just between one man and one corporation anymore. It was a war for the future. The choice was simple. Either the old world continued, or a new one was forged in the fire of innovation. And no matter what it cost, Malcolm was prepared to see it through. The trial had stretched on for weeks, each day dragging Malcolm further into a labyrinth of legal jargon, financial strain, and personal doubt. The media was relentless, broadcasting every moment, every claim, every bit of uncertainty. But despite the pressure, Malcolm held firm, refusing to back down. And then came the moment of reckoning. The day started like any other. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation. Maxwell Hargrave's sudden appearance in the previous hearing had thrown everyone off balance, but it was clear that Centurion Motors wasn't going to let up. They had all but convinced the public that Malcolm's engine was a pipe dream, a fool's gamble with no real future. But something in Malcolm had changed. The questions, the doubts, the smear campaigns, none of it mattered now. He had reached a point of no return. This was no longer just about the Phoenix engine. It was about something much bigger. The right to dream, to innovate, and to create without fear of being crushed by those who had power and resources on their side. Malcolm took the stand for the final time. His voice was steady, his mind clear. He could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him, but he also knew he had something no one could take away. "Your Honor," he began, addressing the judge directly, "I'm not here because I want fame, fortune, or recognition. I'm here because I believe that we can do better. We can build cleaner, more efficient engines. We can build a future where we don't destroy the world just to get from point A to point B. But to do that, we need to be allowed to innovate." He paused, letting his words sink in. The attorney for Centurion Motors, a sharp-faced woman in a dark suit, rose to her feet. "Mr. Reed, with all due respect, you're asking us to take a leap of faith on something that isn't proven. We cannot allow your dreams to disrupt the entire industry." Malcolm looked her squarely in the eyes. "I'm not asking for your faith. I'm asking for your vision. A vision where we don't just accept what's been done for decades. A vision where we don't settle for the status quo." There was a silence in the courtroom. For a moment, it felt as if time itself had stopped. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. And then, slowly, the judge leaned forward. "We have heard from both sides," the judge said, her voice cutting through the tension. "The evidence has been presented. The arguments made. It's clear that the Phoenix engine is unlike anything we've seen before. Whether it can stand the test of time, only the future will tell. But this court cannot decide what will or will not change the world. That is not within our power." The judge's words hit like a hammer, but it was what came next that truly sent shockwaves through the room. "However," the judge continued, "the court does recognize the importance of innovation and the need to protect the right to create and challenge established systems. Therefore, Centurion Motors' claims are dismissed, and Mr. Reed is granted full rights to his intellectual property regarding the Phoenix engine." The courtroom erupted into a mix of shock and disbelief. The gavel came down, sealing the decision. Malcolm couldn't believe it. He sat there, his heart racing as the realization of victory slowly settled in. They had won. The Phoenix engine was his. No one could take it from him now. Lena, Daryl, and the rest of the team gathered around him, their faces breaking into smiles, their hands clapping him on the back. But even as the cheers rang out, Malcolm's thoughts turned to the future. This battle was over, but the war was far from won. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. With Centurion Motors out of the picture, Malcolm's team began working in full force to bring the Phoenix to market. No more delays, no more second-guessing. They would take the Phoenix engine to the world on their terms. Malcolm knew the journey ahead would still be difficult. There would be more battles, financial struggles, corporate resistance, and more naysayers. But for the first time in a long time, the weight he carried seemed a little lighter. The engine was no longer just a blueprint or a prototype. It was a movement, a symbol of what could be accomplished when the underdog refused to back down. People all over the world were starting to take notice, and it was clear that the Phoenix was destined to change more than just the way we drive. It was going to change the way we thought about the future. Reed Motorworks became a hub of innovation. What started as a small workshop was now the birthplace of new ideas, technologies, and, most importantly, hope. Malcolm hired more engineers, more mechanics, and more dreamers to help him push the boundaries of what was possible. The Phoenix engine was just the beginning. And as Malcolm stood in his workshop, surrounded by the hum of machines and the scent of oil and metal, he knew he had done something important. Not just for himself, but for the world. He had proven that one person, armed with nothing but determination and a dream, could change the course of history. And that was worth more than anything money could buy. The end. Moral lessons from the Phoenix engine. 1. The power of persistence in the face of adversity. One of the strongest lessons in this story is the importance of persistence. Malcolm Reed was faced with countless obstacles, from corporate giants trying to steal his idea, to the constant threat of legal battles and media attacks. Yet he never gave up. Instead, he remained focused on his vision, driven by the belief that he could create something better. This teaches us that no matter how difficult the path may seem, persistence is key. Even when the world tells you that you can't succeed, it's your determination and refusal to give up that can turn the tide in your favor. Success rarely comes easily, and the journey is often filled with challenges. But those who keep pushing forward, who refuse to let setbacks define them, are the ones who ultimately make history. 2. Innovation is born from passion, not convenience. Malcolm didn't set out to invent the Phoenix engine because it was easy or profitable. He did it because he saw an opportunity to make a difference, to challenge the status quo, and to build something that would have a lasting impact on the world. This is a critical lesson for anyone working on a project or pursuing a dream. True innovation is driven by passion, not convenience. When we pursue something that excites us, something we believe in deeply, we unlock the potential to change the world. If Malcolm had simply followed conventional wisdom and accepted the current state of the automotive industry, he would have never come up with the Phoenix engine. It's the willingness to think outside the box and pursue what others deem impossible that can lead to breakthroughs. 3. The importance of integrity. Throughout the story, Malcolm is faced with temptations to sell out, whether through accepting Centurion Motors' offer to buy his invention or compromising his values in the face of growing pressure. However, he chooses to stay true to himself and his vision, never compromising the integrity of his work. This teaches us that integrity is more valuable than short-term rewards. Success that comes at the expense of one's morals is hollow and fleeting. True success, like Malcolm's eventual victory, is built on a foundation of honesty, authenticity, and doing the right thing even when no one is watching. In a world full of shortcuts, standing by your principles is a powerful reminder that lasting success is not just about the destination, but about how you get there. 4. Believing in yourself when no one else does. From the very beginning, Malcolm faced skepticism. He was just a mechanic. No fancy degrees, no high-profile backing, yet he believed in his idea. He had a vision for the Phoenix engine, and despite the ridicule, the doubts, and the overwhelming odds against him, he pushed forward. This story teaches us that self-belief is a critical ingredient for success. It's easy to be discouraged when others doubt you, especially when the voices of skepticism seem so loud. But if you believe in your ability, your vision, and your worth, you can overcome any barrier. Malcolm trusted himself when everyone else thought he was just playing with oil. He proved that believing in yourself, no matter how improbable the dream, can lead to extraordinary achievements. 5. Standing up against powerful forces. At the core of this story is Malcolm's refusal to back down against the corporate giants who sought to control his invention. Centurion Motors, a massive company with infinite resources, used every tactic at their disposal to crush him. They tried to discredit his work, to steal his intellectual property, and to destroy his reputation. But despite their power, Malcolm stood firm. He didn't let their influence intimidate him. This is a powerful lesson about standing up to powerful forces, whether they are large corporations, governments, or societal pressures, that try to suppress innovation and creativity. It teaches us that standing up for what's right, even when the odds are stacked against us, is crucial. Change often comes when ordinary people like Malcolm refuse to be cowed by the forces trying to maintain the status quo. 6. The value of hard work and dedication. Throughout the story, Malcolm's success is not the result of luck or happenstance. His achievement with the Phoenix engine was the culmination of years of hard work, long hours, and a dedication to mastering his craft. While others may have seen him as just a mechanic, he was in fact an innovator who spent countless hours studying, experimenting, and refining his engine. This lesson teaches us that there is no substitute for hard work. Even the most groundbreaking innovations come from putting in the effort day in and day out, no matter how small or mundane the task may seem. There is no shortcut to true success. Only through dedication and relentless pursuit of excellence can we hope to achieve our goals. 7. The ripple effect of one person's actions. In the end, Malcolm's victory isn't just about the Phoenix engine or the financial rewards that come with it. It's about the larger impact his actions have on the world. His determination sparked a movement, inspiring people everywhere to believe in their own ability to create change. His story shows us that even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect, reaching far beyond what we could ever imagine. Malcolm didn't just change the way engines worked, he changed the way people thought about innovation and the possibilities for a better future. This is an important lesson. Every action, no matter how small, has the potential to spark something bigger than we realize. The choices we make, the risks we take, and the values we uphold can set off a chain reaction that influences those around us, and even the world at large. Conclusion. The Phoenix engine is not just a story of invention or success. It is a story of resilience, integrity, and the power of believing in something greater than oneself. Malcolm Reed's journey teaches us that in the face of adversity, innovation and passion can light the way forward. His battle is not just a fight for intellectual property, it is a fight for a vision, a belief in a better world, and a testament to the power of standing firm in the face of overwhelming odds. From persistence and integrity to the importance of hard work and the ripple effects of our actions, these lessons are more than just points of reflection. They are a call to action. They remind us that no matter how difficult the road, each one of us has the power to make a difference and shape the future in ways we might never fully understand. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey through the Phoenix engine. I hope Malcolm Reed's story has inspired you to believe in your own potential, to chase your dreams no matter the obstacles, and to never underestimate the power of persistence and innovation. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can stay updated on more motivational and inspiring content. We've got plenty of stories just like this one, full of lessons that can help you grow and keep pushing forward. Be sure to check out the other videos on the channel for more stories that motivate and inspire. And if you have any thoughts or reflections from today's story, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again for watching, and remember, no dream is too big if you're willing to put in the work. Until next time, stay motivated, stay inspired, and keep reaching for